Today we are having a very fun discussion about modern SOC with Ankur from Exaforce. So when you built this technology, when you built this company, was there a problem in SOC's life that you just couldn't ignore?
Yeah, so I think, Anton, that's a great question. When we started Exaforce, my thought process was very simple. We basically were facing this issue in my previous company. Whenever we would sign up like a new customer, whether it was TikTok or Zoom or others, right, big banks, the SOC team would, or the managed services team would actually ask for a bunch of resources. And as I dug deeper, I mean, the team had become very large, like over 100 people. And then I dug deeper and I saw that a lot of the automation that should have been in place was not there. And that was something that my SRE team, my DevOps team always had that, right? So as I thought a little bit more, I went and talked with Pedro, who was my co-founder, and he was at Google working on the BARD project. As you know, Google was big on improving quality of BARD, and then basically as they moved to Gemini, they really wanted to make sure that the output quality is high, right? And we said, can we bring the same like learning, same concepts, married with automation that we were doing on the DevOps and SRE side, and bring it to the SOC so that every time we add new customers, we don't have to hire a lot of people, right? So that was basically how we got started. It was literally as simple as that. And then as I dug deeper, the whole thing became, can we build bots that are way smarter at certain tasks, not like AGI, but something that very task specific bots that have been highly trained, highly tuned, and the quality of the output has been improved dramatically, right? So we basically said, let's do that. Let's put it on the task of SOC automation, the entire stack, right? Not just analysts, but the entire stack of the SOC automation, and then we go forward from there, right? So that's basically how we got started, and it was literally as simple as, hey, let's improve the automation capabilities that people don't have today.
Yep. So it's the basically relative automation balance, so to say. I think that makes sense. I definitely we had somebody on my podcast a few months ago who basically said that security tends to be many years behind the ops, and ops is many years behind dev in some of these tasks.
Yeah.
So this definitely brings back memories of that when you look and the SOC is in the 2000s while the developers are in 2020s kind of thing.
Correct. That's something you've been talking about all the time. Like I watch your posts. I keenly listen to it. You've been talking about the same thing for a long time. We were facing it, right? I was literally facing it every day.
Yep. So at the same time, this discussion, of course, makes sense to me. But one thing that comes up a lot is that defining the modern SOC is tricky. And I still see people who think that a modern SOC is just a more expensive version with better chairs, better screens. Or is there a more fundamental shift happening with this, and that you can see?
Yeah, I mean, I was looking at, I was at Deutsche Bank few years back, and they used to have like these big ass screens with like lots of people looking at it, and I was like always wondering, what are these guys even doing, right? How can they actually do this in a scalable manner? It doesn't make any sense. You got to have enough alerts coming in, and somebody needs to route the alerts, and people need to take action on those, or automation systems need to take action. I think that's where the SOC really needs to get to. And when we build our managed services team, so we have a full MDR capabilities on Exaforce, right? We don't let the bots loose. We basically make sure that the bots are basically fully managed by humans and backed by the quality of a human reasoning, right? So to do that, we don't have lots of screens. We don't have like large rooms where people are sitting and collaborating. They're actually doing it on Slack, for example, right? Or they're doing it on Teams, and they have full automation capabilities. I think that's where the SOC needs to get to. And it's not just about analysts, right? You really need to start from the basics. How do you get really clean and high quality data, highly enriched, highly correlated data, right? Everything starts with that. If your data is poor quality, you're going to like get poor results no matter whether you throw AI or a human at it. It doesn't matter, right? So you got to have like really high quality data. And to a large extent, we have been building SIMs that only have logs, right? Now logs don't tell you the entire story, right? You need logs, you need endpoint data, like maybe from an EDR, you need all kinds of email information about the user, you need all the cloud information, you need the SaaS tools, configuration, drives and files, code, all of that needs to be enriched. So what we think is that the modern data warehouse is basically logs plus everything else, right? And they're highly correlated, highly contextualized. And then from there, you try to find needles, right? So you basically have to start from how do I build a great data lake? And then how do I detect issues inside it? And obviously there are alerts coming in from other sources as well, right? Like for example, Google Cloud is generating alerts, AWS GuardDuty is generating alerts, Google Workspace is doing the same thing, Microsoft Defender, right? CrowdStrike. So you have, alerts coming from your system, and you've got external alerts coming in, and they all need to be triaged. Now, if you can contextualize it, if you can correlate it, and then if you have all the behavioral signals already built in, you can reduce the context down, and it goes back to the whole thing about how to improve quality of the output from the LLM, right? So in order to do that, we basically compress the amount of context that the LLM has to go work on, and then you get output that is much higher quality, right? So again, it's going back to much higher quality data, much better behavioral signals, feed it to the knowledge model, and then everything gets taken care of, whether it's detections, whether it's triaging, investigations, forensics, insider threat analysis, all of that becomes a lot easier. So I think that's where the world needs to get to.
I think that makes sense. And I think that the number of people who assume that no changes to data collection, data quality, but a fancy AI on top would improve things is staggering. And at this point, I kind of lost my voice arguing with them, because it's just utterly stupid that they think that with diverse data, with incomplete data, with corrupted data with broken timestamps, magically AI would do a better job than humans. I think that's it's on my list of top 5 annoyances for sure. So AI SOC is an interesting category, and some people think that AI SOC is a update for SIEM. I've met people who think that this is a new SOAR and this would replace SOAR in the future. So what's your perception of the category where you are? Is this a new take on SIEM, a new take on security data lake, or is it an entirely new category?
I think if you look at, there are 2 classes of companies in this space right now. One which is basically helping with triaging of alerts. So that's really analyst productivity. You can't call it AI SOC. You can call it it could be like an analyst productivity, analyst automation tool, right? So I think that's a fair assumption, fair categorization of what they do. The second one is, can I actually do automation of every aspect of the SOC? Maybe not 100%, but can I get to like 60, 70% of the task? And can I automate or improve quality of data and all of that? So I would say that AI SOC could potentially fall in this category of that the way we have been doing SOC is not up to mark with where the DevOps and the SRE teams have gone. Can we bring it up to that part, right? Can we improve data quality? Can we apply more AI techniques? Could be not just LLMs, have to be all the old techniques as well that we have been building over the last 20 years, right? Just because we have a lot more GPU scale and we have a lot more processing power, we can do a lot more today, right? So I would say that the AI SOC really needs to be about, can I bring automation to 60, 70% of the tasks and then let humans do the rest of it?
Yep, that actually makes sense to me. And I think that while the exact space would eventually settle on something, it may become part of SIEM, it may become part of SOAR, or maybe AI SOC would win, which frankly I doubt. I think that the solving customer use cases trumps the exact categorization, at least at the moment.
Yeah, I think that the thing that where I feel personally, right, the SIMs failed for all of us, and you had, why did you need source, for example, right? Data enrichment should have been done by the SIM, right? Naturally, that's the right place to do it. And the SIMs just focused on logs, and doing identity enrichment was so hard, doing account enrichment so hard, right? That should be all automated. It should be all part of the system. That's why you see EDRs, CDRs, email phishing, all of those take off, because people don't want to do it by themselves in their SIMs, right?
Yep. So I want to switch topic to possibly an area that maybe is more interesting to me than to you, but we'll see in a moment. Lately, there was a lot of fascination with this concept of decoupled SIEM, where people separate storage of security data from actual analysis. People bring up memories of bring compute to data, bring data to compute, but compute in this case means security analysis, not just general compute. Where do you stand in this decoupled or coupled or integrated SIEM? Do you want to bring compute to data to compute? What's your answer to this question?
Yeah, so I've actually been following the whole security data lake and the data lake narrative for a long time. When we architected our platform, I think one of the things that I really wanted to solve from day one was the query performance and the cost of querying, right? If you look at it, whether I put it in Snowflake or I put it in Google Chronicle, like, or anything for that matter, the biggest problem is, okay, so for example, you're going to put a cribble in front of your data lake so that you can reduce the amount of data going in, downsampling, filtering, whatever you want to do it, right? And why are you doing that? Because your data lake either cannot take all the data, or it will, when it comes to processing all the data, it's going to become really slow, right? Or it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. That's literally the issues that you need to solve. So what we thought is, what would be great is if you can actually build a security data lake, which keeps all the logs as much as possible, and then move to an in-memory database architecture where all the data actually is unloaded, and it's unloaded at different time scales so that you can actually do both real-time processing and aggregation at the same time, and then the cost is very low and the performance is very high, right? So I really think that the decoupling of the data lake and the querying and all of this makes sense. But I think the architectures we have chosen are wrong, or they're too expensive and they're not solving the right problem, right? So that's why when we built our stuff, we built it with a clean sheet with a very different approach. And that's why it's really fast and it's much lower cost, right? We can basically do stuff that you can't do in a traditional data warehouse.
Yes, I'm a little nervous when people show up with generic data warehouse answers for security, and then they pretend they would save money. And it has happened to some people, but the opposite happened to others. So that's why I'm kind of questioning this general purpose storage. Maybe because I was old enough to live through, oh, we'll just save it in Oracle back in the early 2000s. Yeah. So I want to touch on one other common industry debate, hoping for your sort of a fun take on this. At this point in 2025, we have the established SIEM vendors and SOAR vendors entering in the race, and there's of course a whole bunch of AI SOC startups. So why can't somebody just slap an LLM into a SIEM or a SOAR and call it a day and call it a modern tool because it has an LLM? What's different to this AI native approach, and why is it better, if it is better?
Yeah, I don't think there is something like an AI native approach, right? What you really need to solve is
Okay, that's excellent.
solving the data problem, because AI needs data, right? Anything human needs data. So if you need a data, whether you have a human processing it or some machine intelligence processing it, it doesn't really matter, right? So I think if you really go back and focus on solving the problem of much higher quality data, and then basically everything becomes a lot easier. So I think what we really need to think about is not just AI native SOC or what is an AI native SIM. It's really about, can I get very high quality data? And if I can do that, then everything else becomes easier. And the other thing is, you can't shove all the data through an LLM. It can't keep up, right? I mean, the latency is too high. And you can't use it for detections for sure. I mean, if anybody's trying to use it for detections, they're going to get detection 1 hour late, and it's going to be super expensive detection,
Yes,
right?
that has happened in your life. Yep.
Right. So that doesn't make any sense. You can use it for triage, but then again, the cost of triage and the latency of triage has to be very short. And to do that, you really need to compress data. You can't say, okay, I'm going to figure out the entire identity chain by basically throwing a bunch of logs and asking the LLM to keep querying and keep getting data. It's going to be futile, and it's going to be expensive at the same time, right? And you have to do detection, and then you got to do this. So I think the architecture is not properly understood, and people just say, oh, this LLM thing is great, I'm going to just go start using it, right? That works for demos and POCs, but doesn't really work in production, in my opinion.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think I want to ask one last question, given the timing we have, and it's a question about testing. A lot of people, a lot of security leaders see vendors show up with AI SOC, AI native, AI MDR, whatever else. It doesn't really matter what they show up with, or even legitimate classic legacy vendor shows up with LLMs left on top. And they say, here, we have AI. And the CISO is supposed to what? Accept it? Or what is your advice on testing? What is your advice on confirming that something that vendor claims actually works?
It's not easy. I can tell you that agentic testing is very hard. It's an unsolved problem, right? What we can do and what we do internally, for example, is we do a regression test every time a new release goes out, every time a new model comes out, every time we improve the model, right? We have a fairly robust testing framework, but it's not great. I mean, if you ask me, it's like 100% fail safe. No, it's not, right? And that's why what we did was we made sure that almost every customer is backed by human analysis, and make sure that the bots are not making mistakes. And I think it's an industry problem that we have to solve. It's early days. It's not just SOC, agentic SOC problem. It's an agentic problem, period, right? We all need to figure out how to get determinism out of it. And if you don't have determinism, testing becomes harder, right? So that's actually the biggest problem that we need to solve. I don't think I have a silver bullet for you, but it's a work in progress.
Thank you very much for this. Really appreciate the insights today. I felt like we went through an interesting journey through AI SOC and AI in the SOC. So thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you, Anton. I really do always appreciate your insights, always.